the bat bombs of Project X-Ray. These were tiny, adorable flying mammals weaponized into arguably the most chaotic arsonists in military history. No, seriously, just listen to this. A dentist came up with this idea. He thought, how can we create the most efficient, widespread chaos imaginable? And the answer the universe sent back to him was bats. Little tiny Mexican free-tailed bats. And this is the best part. The part that makes me just want to scream at how brilliantly unhinged it is. They created these tiny miniature napalm bombs and glued them to these little critters with surgical adhesive. Each bat was a tiny, hibernating incendiary. The plan was to drop millions of them from bombers at dawn over enemy cities. The bats would wake up, fly off to find cozy places to hide eaves, attics, all the nooks and crannies of paper and wood buildings, and then poof, the tiny timers would go off. This wasn't a precision strike. This was a symphony of chaos. Thousands of fires starting all at once, everywhere, delivered by unwitting, furry little agents. Can you even imagine? An entire city bursting into flames because a bunch of adorable bats were just trying to find a place to nap. The innocence of the animal versus the sheer destruction it carries. It's a kind of dark poetry I just have to admire. It failed. Of course, mostly because the bats kept escaping and burning down the US military base they were on. God, what chaotic little traitors. The Soviet anti-tank dogs. They were good boys, weaponized by desperation and a horrifyingly flawed understanding of canine psychology. A dog's loyalty is one of the purest things in this world, isn't it? It's unquestioning, it just is. And in the madness of war, humanity looked at that purity and thought, how can we turn that into a bomb? My heart just breaks talking about this. The idea was as simple as it was monstrous. They would starve the dogs, then place food under tanks too, train them to associate the vehicles with food, with salvation. Then they'd strap an explosive harness to their backs, with a little lever that would trigger when the dog dove under an enemy tank. They turned man's best friend into a guided missile of loyalty and hunger. But the real tragedy, the part that makes this not just cruel but a dark cosmic joke, was in the training. They trained these dogs using their own tanks. Soviet tanks, which ran on diesel. German tanks, the actual targets, ran on gasoline. They smelled different. So, can you picture the horrific scene? On the battlefield, the poor dogs, confused and terrified by the strange, gasoline-reeking machines, would often turn around. They ran towards the familiar smell, the smell of safety, the smell of the Soviet tanks in their own trenches. Their loyalty, weaponized and honed, led them right back home carrying death. They weren't traitors. They were just good dogs trying to do what they were taught. They were victims of a plan that was not only brutal, but breathtakingly stupid. A fundamental misunderstanding of an animal's world that turned a weapon into a self-destructing tragedy, and the soldiers who had to watch it happen. My God. The acoustic dolphins of the Navy. These weren't just playful sea creatures. They were covert operatives in a silent, underwater Cold War. Do you ever just stare out at the ocean and wonder how many secrets it's keeping under all those waves? I do. And one of its best kept secrets isn't about submarines or lost treasure. It's about Flipper. Yeah, dolphins. But not the SeaWorld kind. Think James Bond, only sleeker, smarter, and with built-in biological sonar. At the height of the Cold War, the US Navy realized these creatures weren't just intelligent. They were acoustic geniuses. Their biosonar was more sophisticated than anything humans could build. So what did they do? They recruited them. They built an army of underwater spies. These dolphins were trained to hunt for sea mines on the ocean floor, using their clicks and whistles to paint a perfect sound map for their human handlers. They were trained to patrol harbors, to tell the difference between a curious sea turtle and an enemy frogman. They were the silent sentinels. There are rumors, hushed stories of more radical missions, dolphins trained to attach tracking devices to enemy subs, or even to attack enemy divers with nose-mounted devices. Imagine being an enemy diver moving in silence, and the last thing you see is a gray shadow rocketing toward you at impossible speeds. This wasn't warfare of bombs and bullets, it was psychological, it was acoustic. These animals weren't dumb tools. They were highly trained operatives, partners in the dark. And the scariest part, we don't really know the full story. So much of the program is still classified. What did those dolphins see? What did they do in the deep? We might never know. The cherubim of the trenches, they were simple birds, transformed by human desperation into winged martyrs of the Great War. In the literal hell on Earth that was World War I, where mud swallowed men whole and barbed wire grew like weeds, all of man's technology failed. Telegraph lines were cut, telephones were a joke, human runners were shot down. When all hope was lost, when a battalion was surrounded and being shelled by their own artillery, they looked to the sky and placed the lives of hundreds of men in the care of one fragile creature. A carrier pigeon? Just imagine that. Imagine being a bird, your only instinct to fly home to safety. But to get home, you have to fly through a maelstrom of steel. You have to fly through clouds of mustard gas that burn your lungs, through machine gun fire designed to tear through metal. This is the story of Cher Amy, dear friend. She was released by the Lost Battalion, carrying a desperate message. We are a long road. For God's sake, stop firing. The Germans saw her. They opened fire. She was shot through the chest, blinded in one eye, and one of her legs was blown almost entirely off, hanging by a single tendon, but she didn't stop. Wounded, bleeding, she kept flying. 25 miles in 25 minutes. She made it. The message tube was still dangling from her ruined leg. She saved 194 men. This isn't a story about a weapon. It's a story of impossible endurance. These birds weren't soldiers. They didn't understand patriotism or duty. They just wanted to go home. And in that simple, instinctual journey, they showed a bravery most humans could never fathom. They were little angels flying through hell, and we were the ones who sent them there. These stories may be strange and dark, but they show us the incredible courage and resilience of these creatures when we inadvertently bring them into our wars. Good night, my little foxes. Please subscribe to help me maintain this little YouTube channel. Good night, and have sweet dreams. I'll see you again. Goodbye.